Hello everyone and welcome to my General Hospital channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. In a stunning twist that has left General Hospital fans reeling, the unexpected shooting of Vaughn sets off a chain reaction of shockwaves through Port Charles, leaving Jocelyn Jacks caught between grief, disbelief, and the harrowing secret that could change everything she thought she knew about the man who had become such a complicated figure in her life. Because Vaughn had long been written as a dangerous, enigmatic character, someone with one foot in the shadows of the criminal underworld and another tentatively stepping toward redemption. But in the end, his bloody collapse on the pavement and the gut-wrenching scene of him fighting for breath in Joss's arms became more than just another moment of violence on the streets of Port Charles. It became the vehicle for one shocking revelation that will not only reshape Jocelyn's perception of Vaughn, but could unravel larger mysteries about alliances, betrayals, and truths that have been buried for years. Because as Vaughn's life literally slipped away, with every pulse of blood soaking his shirt, he managed to clutch Joss's wrist with a desperation that conveyed both urgency and regret, whispering to her through broken gasps that he had to tell her the truth before it was too late. And Jocelyn, still reeling from the sudden chaos of gunfire, knelt beside him, begging him to hold on, begging him not to leave her with more unanswered questions. But Vaughn forced out the words that would forever haunt her, words that linked her directly to the tangled history of Port Charles in a way she never expected. For the secret he shared before closing his eyes in what might be his final moment was not about money or power or even his enemies, but about her own life, her family, and the web of connections that had silently shaped everything around her. And as the weight of those words hit Joss, she realized that Vaughn's truth was both a confession and a curse, a burden that now rested squarely on her shoulders as she tried to comprehend whether she could believe a dying man's last admission or whether it was another manipulation meant to destabilize her. Yet the look in his eyes, the vulnerability in his tone, and the urgency with which he forced the secret from his lungs made it clear that Vaughn wanted nothing more in that final moment than to leave her with the truth, no matter how much damage it might cause. And the aftershocks of this revelation will ripple out far beyond Joss and Vaughn's connection, because it ties directly into rivalries with Sonny Corinthos, betrayals involving Ava Jerome, secrets buried by Alexis Davis, and even long-forgotten sins that reach as far back as Rick Lansing's near-fatal accident and the mysterious chain of sabotage that has plagued Port Charles for months. So Jocelyn is left in a maelstrom of grief, fury, and determination, realizing she can't simply walk away from what Vaughn has handed her. Because the secret is more than just a dying declaration. It is the missing puzzle piece that could blow apart the fragile stability of families, relationships, and power structures in town. And as news spreads about Vaughn's shooting, the questions about who pulled the trigger, why he was targeted, and whether his death was meant to silence him before he spoke all swirl around the canvas, creating tension among characters who each have something to hide. But what makes this twist so gripping is the way it locks Jocelyn into a central role, forcing her into the very kind of danger and intrigue her mother Carly always feared for her. Because now Joss not only has to grieve a man she never fully trusted, yet couldn't entirely hate, she also has to decide whether to expose his final words to the world or bury them deep in order to protect the people she loves. And fans of General Hospital know that this choice won't come easy. Because Joss has inherited Carly's fiery instincts, but also Sonny's sense of loyalty. And Vaughn's secret directly challenges both of those qualities, leaving her in an impossible position that will evolve into one of the most dramatic arcs of the season, with the fallout touching every corner of Port Charles, from Dex's role as protector and possible suspect, to Sonny's empire facing new cracks, to Jason and Anna uncovering the truth behind Vaughn's alliances, and to Ava calculating how to spin this tragedy to her advantage, while Alexis finds herself once again drawn into the legal and moral mess that secrets and lies always generate. And through it all, Jocelyn will be haunted by the image of Vaughn bleeding out in her arms, whispering words that refuse to stop echoing in her head, words that will drive her to action, recklessness, and perhaps even a darker path than she ever thought she would walk, making Vaughn's shocking deathbed confession not just a moment of heartbreak, but a catalyst for a story that promises to consume General Hospital in the weeks and months ahead, with layer after layer of betrayal, justice, revenge, and revelation. The haunting aftermath of Vaughn's shooting continues to reverberate through every corner of Port Charles. And as Jocelyn staggers away from the blood-soaked pavement where she held his body, her hands trembling and her mind spinning with the secret Vaughn entrusted her to, she realizes that life as she knew it has shifted on its axis forever. Because no matter how hard she tries to silence the memory of his ragged breathing or the pained way his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that seemed to pierce her very soul, the truth he confessed will never stop echoing in her thoughts, demanding to be acknowledged. Yet what makes this moment even more unbearable is the gnawing doubt over whether she should believe him, whether Vaughn, whose life was built on half-truths, double dealings, and carefully constructed facades, could really be trusted in those last fleeting moments, or whether he used his deathbed as a stage for one final manipulation, planting seeds that would grow into chaos long after he was gone. But as Joss paces in her room later that night, staring out into the dark Port Charles skyline, she remembers the unmistakable sincerity in his voice, the way his lips trembled as he forced himself to utter words that clearly cost him his last breath. And deep down, she knows Vaughn was not lying, because no man about to die wastes his final strength on fabrication. Which means Jocelyn is now the unwilling guardian of a secret that has the power to reshape her family, her friendships, and even her own sense of self. And the weight of it makes her knees weak every time she imagines what will happen if she lets it slip. For Vaughn's revelation connects her to people she never thought she'd be tied to, dredges up sins long buried, and forces her to question her own identity in ways that threaten to consume her. And while she debates in silence what to do next, the rest of Port Charles is already abuzz with theories and suspicions, because Vaughn's shooting was no random act of violence. It was a targeted strike, and the rumor mill immediately begins churning, with Sonny demanding answers, Jason quietly taking stock of who was in Vaughn's orbit, Anna scrutinizing the timing, and Ava pretending to be shocked while secretly calculating whether Vaughn's demise helps or hurts her own position. And even though Dex tries to comfort Jocelyn by promising her they will find out who pulled the trigger, she feels herself pulling away from him. Because how can she share Vaughn's last words with someone who might be implicated in the very web Vaughn tried to expose? And every time Dex presses her about what happened in those final seconds, Joss stiffens, dodges, and changes the subject, leaving Dex suspicious but unwilling to push too hard. And meanwhile, Carly, ever the protective mother, senses something is off in her daughter's demeanor, yet Joss refuses to unburden herself, knowing that once Carly hears the secret, there's no taking it back, because her mother will act with ferocious speed, possibly blowing apart everything Vaughn risked to tell her. And so Joss chooses silence, a choice that begins to eat away at her as the days go by, making her more reckless, more erratic, more determined to dig deeper on her own. Because Vaughn's final confession didn't just end with his last breath. It began a firestorm that Jocelyn can't put out. And as she retraces Vaughn's last movements, looking for context that might confirm what he told her, she finds herself dragged deeper into a shadowy underworld of alliances, betrayals, and dangerous truths, stumbling into conversations she was never meant to hear, discovering files Vaughn had hidden in places only she could piece together, and slowly realizing that his death confession was only the tip of the iceberg, because Vaughn had been protecting something, or someone, that Port Charles's most powerful players desperately want to keep buried. And with every step Joss takes, she feels eyes watching her, threats closing in, shadows moving where they shouldn't, until she begins to understand that by holding Vaughn's secret, she has painted a target on her own back. And if the shooter who silenced him suspects that she knows the truth, then her life may be the next one hanging in the balance. And yet, Joss cannot simply walk away, because Vaughn's dying wish has bound her to this mission. And deep inside, she feels compelled to honor him, not because she loved him, but because in that final desperate moment, he trusted her with his truth when no one else could. And now it is hers to protect, hers to decide how and when to unleash. And in true General Hospital fashion, the fallout promises to be explosive. As Sonny struggles to keep control of his crumbling empire, Carly tries to shield her daughter from a war she cannot fully comprehend. Jason investigates in his quiet, lethal way. Anna pulls threads that may unravel old cases. Alexis is forced to confront whether her own past entanglements intersect with Vaughn's secret. Ava manipulates every opportunity to her advantage, and Dex finds himself torn between loyalty, love, and suspicion, while Jocelyn herself is transformed from student and daughter into a young woman caught in the crucible of power, betrayal, and truth. Driven by the knowledge that Vaughn's last words were not just a revelation, but a call to action, a torch passed to her in blood, demanding that she carry it forward no matter the cost. And as Port Charles braces for the aftershocks of Vaughn's violent end, the question is not just who shot him, but whether Jocelyn will survive long enough to decide what to do with the devastating secret he died to share. And so the days after Vaughn's shooting stretched into an agonizing blur for Jocelyn, who finds herself caught between the sharp sting of grief and the suffocating pressure of secrecy. Because no matter how many times she replayed that night in her mind, the gunshot echoing in the distance, Vaughn's body jerking violently before collapsing, the way she scrambled to his side with frantic hands pressing against the wound, whispering desperate pleas for him to hold on, the memory always ends the same, with his broken voice spilling that one shocking truth into her ears before fading into silence, leaving her trembling in the shadows with more questions than answers. And while everyone else in Port Charles treats his shooting as another headline in the city's long history of violence, for Jocelyn it is personal, unbearable, and inescapable, because the secret Vaughn passed on to her has become a live wire, pulsing through her veins, demanding to be acted on. Yet she knows that once she speaks it aloud, the world will never be the same. And so she holds it close, a private poison that seeps into every interaction she has, whether it's with Dex, who keeps asking if she's sure she doesn't know who Vaughn named as his attacker, or with Carly, who is determined to storm Sonny's world and demand answers, or even with Trina, who senses her best friend's distracted state and tries to draw her out. But Jocelyn smiles, nods, and dodges, unwilling to burden anyone else with the knowledge that Vaughn's secret is a powder keg that could blow their lives apart. And the longer she carries it alone, the more the paranoia grows, because she begins to notice that she is being followed, that certain phone calls click with static before going dead, that her social media is suddenly flooded with strange messages from anonymous accounts. And she realizes that whoever silenced Vaughn might already suspect that she knows what he tried to reveal, which makes her not just a witness, but a threat. And yet, even as fear coils tighter around her, she cannot let go of the promise she made in the heat of that moment when Vaughn's bloody hand clutched hers. Because whether she wanted it or not, he gave her this burden, and part of fear feels she owes it to him to see it through, especially when she uncovers hidden files on his burner phone that point toward deeper conspiracies connecting Vaughn to both enemies and allies within Sonny's circle, suggesting that Vaughn had been playing both sides in a dangerous game, and that his shocking confession to Jocelyn was not a random detail, but the linchpin to understanding why he was killed. And as Jason begins his own quiet investigation, piecing together fragments of Vaughn's movements before the shooting, he notices Jocelyn's evasiveness and suspects she is hiding something, leading to tense exchanges where Jason tries to press her, gently, urging her to trust him. But Jocelyn resists, worried that if she tells Jason, his instinct will be to protect her by erasing the truth. And so she carries on in silence, even as her nightmares worsen, even as Dex grows distant in frustration, even as Carly grows suspicious of her daughter's secretive behavior. And the dramatic irony that fans feel watching these episodes is unbearable because we, the audience, know that Vaughn's deathbed revelation has tied Jocelyn to a truth so explosive it could topple the most powerful families in town. But the characters around her remain in the dark, circling closer and closer to the fire without realizing it. And the writers lean into this tension, dropping small breadcrumbs through flashbacks, cryptic phone calls, and mysterious meetings that tease the scope of Vaughn's hidden life. From coded bank transfers that trace back to offshore accounts in Sonny's name, to old surveillance footage Vaughn had been saving that hints at betrayals stretching back years. And each revelation leaves Jocelyn torn between her instinct to protect those she loves and her growing realization that protecting them may mean continuing the very cycle of lies that Vaughn died trying to end. And so she spirals deeper into obsession, combing through every scrap of information she can find, until she finally stumbles across a hidden letter Vaughn had written but never mailed, tucked inside a hollowed-out book in his apartment. And the words in that letter confirm everything he whispered to her in his final moments, shattering the last shred of denial she had clung to, forcing her to confront the reality that she is now the keeper of a legacy that Vaughn entrusted only to her. And the weight of that responsibility both terrifies and empowers her, because for the first time, Jocelyn feels she has the power to shape the future of Port Charles. Yet the choice she faces is devastating. Should she expose Vaughn's secret and watch it rip through the lives of those she loves? Or should she bury it forever and live with the knowledge that truth died with him? And while she wrestles with that choice, the walls continue to close in, with Anna warning Sonny that a new wave of violence is coming, with Ava smirking knowingly every time Jocelyn enters a room as though she can smell the secret on her, with Alexis connecting dots in Vaughn's taste that threaten to put her back in the line of fire, and with Sonny himself growing increasingly paranoid as he realizes someone within his circle betrayed him to orchestrate Vaughn's murder. And in the middle of it all, Jocelyn stands like a storm's eye, calm on the surface, but swirling with turmoil within, knowing that the secret Vaughn gave her is no longer just a whisper between them. It is a ticking clock counting down to the moment when everything will explode. And as General Hospital builds toward its next climactic twist, fans are left holding their breath, wondering not just what Vaughn's secret truly means, but how long Jocelyn can keep it contained before the dam bursts and Port Charles is flooded with the truth so shocking it will rewrite everything we thought we knew about family, loyalty, betrayal, and legacy in this town, ensuring that Vaughn's death was not the end of his story, but the beginning of one of the most powerful arcs General Hospital has dared to tell. Yet, even as Jocelyn struggles beneath the crushing weight of Vaughn's confession, the universe of Port Charles seems to conspire against her silence, because the secret is too volatile, too dangerous, too earth-shattering to remain buried forever. And everywhere she turns, she feels the ripple of Vaughn's final words tugging at the fabric of her life. Whether it's in Carly's probing eyes as she senses her daughter hiding something monumental, or in Sonny's increasingly paranoid moves to sniff out the traitor in his midst, or in Dex's barely restrained frustration at being shut out when all he wants is to protect her, or in Ava's sly insinuations that suggest she already knows more than she should. And Justin realizes with dawning horror that Vaughn's secret is not just hers anymore, because like a drop of ink in clear water, it has already begun to spread, staining everything it touches. And with every day she keeps it bottled inside, the more dangerous it becomes, because secrets in Port Charles have a way of taking on lives of their own. And Vaughn's final truth is the kind that can burn down dynasties, severe blood ties, and shift the power balance in ways no one is prepared for. So when Jocelyn returns once more to Vaughn's apartment, driven by restless obsession, she discovers hidden photographs tucked beneath the floorboards. Images that prove beyond doubt that Vaughn had been tailing someone close to her family, someone whose very existence is tied to the truth he gasped into her ear before dying. And those photographs rip the air out of her lungs because they confirm what she had tried to deny. Vaughn wasn't just confessing, he was warning her. And the warning is that the people Justin trusts most are not who they seem. And that revelation pushes her into a corner where she can no longer simply sit in silence, because the longer she waits, the greater the danger to herself and to everyone she loves. But still she hesitates, torn by the unbearable reality that exposing Vaughn's secret might mean turning her back on people she has called family her entire life. People who raised her, people she would once have sworn she'd protect at any cost. And the moral dilemma threatens to consume her as she lies awake at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling Vaughn's dying grip still around her wrist, his voice echoing with that fractured truth, reminding her that she has no choice but to act, no matter the price. Because secrets like this are never kept. They're only delayed until the storm breaks. And as Port Charles inches closer to that storm, the stage is set for an explosive reckoning where alliances will crumble, betrayals will be exposed, and the legacy of Vaughn's final words will ignite a storyline that promises to shake General Hospital to its very core.